Will anyone fall out of this tier? Can Matt Ryan support 2 wide receiver ones in fantasy? And who are some potential breakout tight ends? What is going on, guys? This is Wade here with Tongue Sky Gaming Sports, and we are back with our Crunch Time Sports podcast. So today, we will finish up with our rankings, actually, our full rankings. Wide receiver rankings, we'll do the top 12, and then we will move into the top 12 tight end fantasy rankings as well. So this episode, of course, coming out Monday. Make sure you come back the following Friday, so this upcoming Friday, as we will have our first mock draft episode, where we'll do a 10-team PPR draft. I'm not sure where we're going to draft out of just yet, but that will be this Friday. Once again, nothing crazy out of the news from around the league, so we will hop right into the video, starting off with our number 12 wide receiver. That is going to be Mike Evans, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike has had 1,000 yards every year since entering the league in 2014. He has scored 8 touchdowns 4 of these 6 seasons he has been in the NFL. And of course, Jameis Winston is out of Tampa Bay, and Tom Brady, Mr. TB12 himself, is in. So Mike has been one of the best receivers in the game and joins Randy Moss as the only receiver in NFL history to put up 1,000 yards through the first 6 seasons of their career. Last year, though, he did miss 3 games, but he still dominated to a tune of 67 catches, 1,157 yards, and 8 touchdowns. There is no reason he shouldn't be able to replicate this once again heading into the new year. His teammate Chris Godwin is turning into an elite wide receiver, and that really should only help Evans out. Now with Tom Brady taking over as quarterback, you got to think Evans will see more accurate targets. Brady doesn't throw it as deep like Winston does, but he should get plenty of opportunities to pile up receptions. There is just a bit of mystery here, but I will go ahead and take my chances on Evans. His ADP is 303 right now, and this spot in the draft really lets you get some superstar talent, and Evans is definitely one of those guys for sure. Moving on to player number 11, that is going to be Adam Thielen, Minnesota Vikings. Adam has been one of the best undrafted wide receivers ever, and one of the best undrafted players to enter the league, actually. He did have an injury-plagued 2019, and Stephon Diggs, his wide receiver partner out wide, did get traded, but the Vikings did bring in Justin Jefferson from LSU to take over that position. So Thielen entered the league as an undrafted free agent in 2014, and he didn't really get an opportunity until 2016, but boy did he show off. After coming off a historical 2018 where he had 113 catches, 1,373 yards, and 9 touchdowns, the Vikings signed him to a 4-year, $64.2 million contract. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't his year, as in 10 games, he only had 30 catches for 418 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he still played 10 games, but he just wasn't himself at all. Now fully healthy and heading into the 2020 season with Stephon Diggs gone, Thielen will once again be the number 1 in Minnesota, and it's not even close. The Vikings did select wide receiver Justin Jefferson in the first round this year, but he's not going to take away from Thielen at all, and especially with there not really being a true training camp, no preseason games this year, I don't really expect Justin Jefferson to make a big impact until at least, midway, a good chunk of the season into the league anyways. Thielen's ADP is 306, and he may even drop to the back half of round 3, as some of your league mates might not want to risk it with him. I absolutely would, and I am definitely a big Adam Thielen believer again, once more. Moving on to player number 10. This is going to be Calvin Ridley, Atlanta Falcons wide receiver. Calvin had a big-time breakout last year, and he should once again really be another breakout candidate for this season, really establish himself as a true elite wide receiver. He did miss the final 3 games last year, though, due to an abdominal injury, and he has scored 17 touchdowns in his first 2 seasons in the league. Ridley has been one of the best wide receivers since entering the league as a first-round pick out of Alabama in 2018, and he has excelled right away. He had nearly identical stat lines last year in only 13 games as he had his rookie season. Last year, he had 63 catches for 866 yards and 7 touchdowns. If not for the abdominal injury he suffered, he would have easily had 1,000 yards receiving and probably would have put up 10 touchdowns again. It's no secret the Falcons are a high-scoring offense thanks to Matt Ryan and the fact that they haven't had a solid run game since they went to the Super Bowl a few years back. Now with Todd Gurley as the running back, I think they will have more success on the run game just a bit, but they are still a pass-happy offense, and you should do just about anything to get Ridley on your team. Ridley is going at 406 right now, and even with Julio Jones on the team, it may be wiser to pass on Julio and take Ridley instead. If Calvin Ridley can get 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns, he will absolutely be a top wide receiver and will finish as a wide receiver 1 this year. So you should definitely do whatever you can to get him, especially if you aren't able to get in the draft. Try to get a trade together to accept him, because I think he is just going to blow up this year and you don't want to miss out on him. Moving on to player number 9, that is going to be Amari Cooper, wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. He came over trade to the Cowboys in 2018 from the Oakland Raiders at the time. He started hot to begin the season, but he struggled big time down the stretch, and he signed a 5-year, $100 million contract extension this off-season, and reportedly he turned down a little bit more money from the Washingtons to be a Dallas Cowboy once again. Cooper has had an up-and-down career since coming out of Alabama in 2015. He has missed games due to injury and not being 100%, and he even had to play with Derek Carr, who's been pretty down since his MVP almost season. He did look great in the 9 games he played with the Cowboys in 2018, and he started terrific in 2019 as well, before eventually cooling off big time. He ended the year, though, with 79 catches, 1,189 yards, and 8 touchdowns, which ended up being his best statistical season. Now with Michael Gallup coming off a breakout season and CeeDee Lamb, the first-round selection for the Cowboys, they sure are taking a big chance on him. And it was kind of surprising to see them pay so much money towards him, just because of that wide receiver depth that they do have. His ADP is 402 right now, and even though they paid him big money to be the guy in Dallas, there are just too many mouths to feed, so I will gladly roll the dice on the other 2 Cowboy receivers. Mostly Michael Gallup. I definitely think Michael Gallup will have a great year, and he will do absolutely fine. Go ahead and skip over Amari Cooper with that 4th-round pick. Grab another wide receiver, grab another running back, grab a tight end, and set yourself up for Michael Gallup or CeeDee Lamb if you really want a selection and part of this Cowboys offense. Moving on to player number 8, that is going to be Kenny Golladay, Detroit Lions. Kenny exploded to a breakout season last year. He will be a free agent this offseason if he doesn't get, re-signed, of course. Matthew Stafford should be healthy to begin this season again. Kenny G was already a prime candidate to break out last season, and boy did he ever, as he eclipsed double-digit touchdowns even playing with spotty quarterback play last year. For the season, he had 65 catches, 1,190 yards, and 11 touchdowns, and he should come back with another spectacular season with Matthew Stafford back in the saddle. The Lions are a run-first team, but their defense is still bad, so I fully expect them to be throwing by the 4th quarter. There are a couple other pass catchers to watch for. Marvin Jones, which is Kenny G's teammate out wide, and tight end TJ Hawkinson are both solid targets as well. However, they're not going to take away from him, as he's already established that he does need to be the number 1 in that offense. His ADP right now is 302, and even with the other guys in Detroit, like I said, you can lean upon him to be your number 1 with no question about it. Moving on to player number 7, that is going to be DJ Moore, Carolina Panthers. He is an elite breakout candidate for this upcoming season, just like Kenny Golladay was last year. There is a new coaching regime in Carolina, and Cam Newton is out, and Teddy Bridgewater is in. DJ Moore had an excellent sophomore campaign in the NFL and showed that he is easily on his way as an up-and-coming star in the NFL. Last year, he had 87 catches for 1,175 yards and 4 touchdowns. And even if the catches and yards remain the same, an uptick in touchdowns is pretty dang likely, especially with Teddy Bridgewater coming over. Kyle Allen did his best to be a starter in the NFL, but it does look like he will be more like a solid backup instead. Bridgewater should be able to change that. Of course, though, the Panthers have the best running back in football right now, and head coach Matt Rule is coming over from Baylor, so there are a few question marks heading into the season. Regardless, these are great players and should get the job done. Moore's ADP is 312, and I couldn't be more happier as I am taking this guy on all of my teams heading to the fantasy draft this season. For a guy to be a part of this crazy offense, the Panthers don't have a good defense, so they're going to be throwing probably by the fourth quarter, just like the Lions are going to be as well. So you should definitely do whatever you can to get DJ Moore. Teddy Bridgewater isn't an accurate deep passer. He is an accurate short passer, quick-hitting passer. So DJ Moore should constantly be peppered with routes. So you should definitely be looking at him once again to join your team. Moving on to player number 6, that is going to be Chris Godwin, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had a huge breakout last year. He's entering his final year on his rookie deal, and Jameis Winston is out, and Tom Brady is in. And yes, this is the second wide receiver I have as to be a wide receiver 1 for the Buccaneers. That's just how good this Tampa Bay Buccaneers wideouts are. So Chris Godwin has improved each season and should once again continue the charge. Last year he had 86 catches for 1,333 yards and 9 touchdowns. And this year I'm looking for either 100 catches this year or his first double-digit touchdown season. Or both. And if he does do both, he will be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy or close to it. Just like with Mike Evans, Winston is gone and Brady is in and should give better targets all around, which can only help. So Godwin's ADP is 209, and I think he will absolutely crush this ADP and be a first-round pick for next year's fantasy drafts. So once again, this is another wide receiver I am all about, and I am definitely going to be looking at getting. Moving on to player number 5, that is going to be Tyreek Hill, Kansas City Chiefs. He was the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy for 2018. He did have an injury-merit campaign last year, and Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback ever. So, I mean, come on, why not? More than likely, Tyreek is the fastest player in the game right now, as he constantly beats double coverages and safeties every game. Ironically, though, in the playoff game against the Texans, he only went 3 for 41. Anyways, he played 12 games in the regular season and had 58 catches for 860 yards and 7 touchdowns. And he will easily beat those marks for this upcoming season, assuming he stays healthy. There are a bunch of mouths to feed in this offense, in my opinion. Travis Kelce is the one. The offense moves through him, but Tyreek Hill is easily the 2, and he will have a fantastic season, once again, with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. His ADP is 201, and he can be relied upon week in and week out. There isn't much to say with Tyreek Hill here. He's going to get it done no matter what. You don't have to worry about him at all. Moving on to number 4, that is going to be DeAndre Hopkins, Arizona Cardinals wide receiver. He was traded to Arizona this offseason. He has up-and-coming talent all around him, and he has only missed 2 games in his 7-year career. They were both Week 17 games, which the Texans didn't need to play their starters, actually. So Hopkins had a terrific 7-year run in Houston and succeeded with a plethora of quarterbacks, and I'm going to name just a few. Now, he's played with way more quarterbacks than this in Houston, but these are just a few. Matt Schaub, TJ Yates, Ryan Mallett, Ryan Fitzpatrick, Brock Osweiler, and finally Deshaun Watson, just to name a few. Now he is in Arizona and ready to play with Kyler Murray. Last year, Hopkins had 104 catches for 1,165 yards and 7 touchdowns, which was actually his lowest touchdown total since 2016. Just a few question marks in Arizona. Will Kyler take a step forward in his second year? Can Cliff Kingsbury build upon his first year as a head coach? Can the O-line protect Kyler? More than likely, these will all be positive, but I am just a tad cautious. His ADP of 205 isn't too bad. I think if he was still a Texan, he would be in the first round, so the fantasy community is respecting that. If you do take Hopkins early, I would definitely make sure you draft another wide receiver with either of your next two picks, as he is a popular bust candidate among fantasy communities. Moving on to player number 3, that is going to be Julio Jones, Atlanta Falcons. Julio has only scored double-digit touchdowns once in his career. He has at least 1,394 yards in 6 consecutive seasons, and he signed a 3-year extension right before the 2019 offseason. So Julio has been a mark of consistency since the 2014 season. His first 3 years were up and down. Then he turned it on, and there will be no doubt he can continue that success moving into the 2020 season. Last year, he had 99 catches for 1,394 yards and 6 touchdowns, and truly, the most aggravating thing about Julio is his lack of touchdowns. The year the Falcons had their Super Bowl run, and they had the best offense ever, blah, 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 all these stats, Julio had 1,800 yards, but only 8 touchdowns. If he could just score 12 touchdowns or 11 touchdowns one of these seasons, he will no doubt be the number 1 wide receiver in fantasy. But we will just have to accept the 6 touchdowns from year to year. Regardless, his ADP of 203 is fantastic, and I've actually been able to get him more in the middle of round 2, which is just ridiculous for a player like him. There's no reason you should pass on him, as he is a lock for 100 catches and 1,300 yards. All you need is a bounce and touchdowns to take him over the top. Moving on to player number 2, that is going to be Davante Adams, Green Bay Packers. Last year, he ended a run of 3 consecutive seasons with double-digit touchdowns, but that was because he missed 4 games with turf toe. That did contribute to it, and he does have 2 years left on his current deal. So Adams entered the league in 2014, but it wasn't until 2016 that he established himself as a wide receiver that we have come to know and love. In 2018, he had career highs all across the board. He had 111 catches for 1,386 yards and 13 touchdowns. Although a down year in 2019, he had 83 catches for 997 yards and 5 touchdowns in the 12 games he played. Once again, prime with Aaron Rodgers, who may not be elite anymore, but still great. He should see close to the 2018 numbers that he did put up. Adams is the only wide receiver that Rodgers can count on, in my opinion, anyways. They do have a good run game with Aaron Jones, but I expect them to complement each other and not deter from each other. His current ADP is 109, and I don't expect him to fall much. If he is in the second round, jump all over Davante Adams. And moving on to our final wide receiver, it is going to be, without a doubt, Michael Thomas, New Orleans Saints. He set an NFL record of 149 receptions last year. He has actually never had double-digit touchdowns, and he signed a 6-year contract extension right before Week 1 last year. So Thomas was a second-round pick in 2016 and has easily outplayed every wide receiver taken before him, which consists of, I'm pretty sure, Will Fuller, Josh Doxson, I think Corey Davis. So he's obviously done way better than all those receivers. And he was terrific right from the start of his rookie season, going 92 for 1,137 and 9 touchdowns. And he's only gotten better. Last year, like I said, he had 149 catches for 1,725 yards and 9 touchdowns. And another year with Drew Brees means greatness. He saw a whopping 185 targets last year, so he probably won't replicate that season again. But I could easily see him getting 110 catches for 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns, somewhere around that. That's easily on the cards, and that's a modest stat line with Drew Brees at quarterback. There's no reason, absolutely no reason to take any other wide receiver ahead of him. And in my opinion, you can't justify taking him first overall. Me personally, his ADP is 105, and I would take the top 4 running backs and then Thomas. So if he is available after pick 5, go ahead and take him and count your blessings. He is a top wide receiver in fantasy and in real life, and with Drew Brees teetering on retirement, you better enjoy it now while it lasts. All right, moving on to our tight end ranks, beginning with number 12. That is going to be Rob Gronkowski, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He took 1 year off from the NFL. He currently holds a title belt in the WWE, and this will probably be the last year we see Gronk. Maybe, and I mean maybe, if Tom Brady plays next year, he'll stay 1 more year. But is there really anything to say here? Gronk was one of the most dominant and most fun tight ends to watch during his prime, but boy was he injury prone. In his 9-year career before briefly retiring, he had only played in 15 or more games 4 times. Regardless, he is a touchdown monster, and that is all you hope for with tight ends if you don't spend early on them, just to get around 6 points. His ADP is 6'11 right now, but I really expect this to be all over the place. If you do want to take the shot on Gronk, this is going to be the best year to do it, and you might have to spend just a little bit earlier pick than you want to. Moving on to player number 11, that's going to be Hayden Hurst, Atlanta Falcons tight end. He was a first-round pick in 2018. He did get traded from the Ravens to the Falcons, and he gets to be the number 1 tight end for the Falcons this year. Hayden worked as the number 3 tight end in Baltimore, so he never really got his chance to sign, especially being behind Mark Andrews, who we will get to briefly. The Falcons lost Austin Hooper to the Browns, and they liked what they saw enough from Hurst to send a second-rounder for him. Anytime a team trades for a player like this and gives up that much, it should give you confidence that they want to use him. Last year, he had 30 catches for 349 yards and 2 touchdowns. The reason for hope is that in 12 seasons with Matt Ryan as a quarterback, the Falcons tight ends have produced 7 70-catch seasons. Hurst's ADP is 708 right now, and I would venture that he will fall in drafts as most people don't keep up with tight ends as much as they do with other players. Moving on to player number 10, that is going to be Hunter Henry, Los Angeles Chargers. He has once again struggled with injuries. He is entering his final year on his rookie deal, and there will be 2 new quarterbacks for the Chargers, Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert. For the 3rd year in a row, Henry did good when he was on the field, but he missed 4 games with an injury. In those 12 games he played, he put up 55 catches for 652 yards and 5 touchdowns, but that was with tight end friendly Phillip Rivers at quarterback. As he has been the case in the rankings video, how the quarterback play of Tyrod and Justin pan out for tight ends is also a huge question mark. Going at 8-12 this year really isn't that bad to spend a flyer on him if you want to. He is probably the 3rd option for the Chargers anyway, and that might end up passing more in the red zone as Melvin Gordon is no longer on the team. So that is something to look for, is that he probably will get close, if he stays healthy, get close to maybe 8 or 9 touchdowns this year. Moving on to player number 9, that's going to be Jonnu Smith, Tennessee Titans. Jonnu will finally be the number 1 in Tennessee, as he has worked behind Delaney Walker the first 3 or 4 years in the league. He is entering his final year on his rookie deal, and he's really, in my opinion, the only other reliable pass catcher besides A.J. Brown, as the other wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans, Corey Davis, has been more of a bust than anything so far this first few seasons in the league. So like I said, Jonnu was stuck behind Delaney for the first few seasons, but he got to start a good chunk of games last year and produced well enough to be the guy once again this season. Last year he had 35 catches for 439 yards and 3 touchdowns. So I once again think he will be able to get it done. Jonnu is also extremely fast for a tight end, making him a tough matchup for linebackers covering him. Going at a ridiculous 13-12, even though I'm not a huge believer in the Titans this year, that's extreme value if you miss out on some of the top guys. So I am definitely targeting Jonnu Smith for my fantasy drafts if I do miss out on Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Zach Ertz, because this is just too good of a value to pass up, really, in my opinion. Moving on to player number 8, that's going to be Mike Joseki, Miami Dolphins. He is a former second-round pick in 2018. He ended the year on fire for 2019, and he is a potential breakout tight end this year. Joseki struggled his rookie year, but last year he finally started emerging as the second-round pick the Dolphins drafted him to be. From week 9 on, Joseki was the tight end 7 for fantasy. Last year he had 51 catches for 570 yards and 5 touchdowns, and now with the lack of a full training camp, I think it'll take even longer for Tua to become the starter, so that means Ryan Fitzpatrick should keep him relevant much longer. Joseki is going at 1306, and this is another throwaway draft pick just like Jonnu Smith, so you should absolutely roll the dice on him, because after rounds 7 and 8, you can kind of just throw ADP out the window and take the guys that you want to take and believe in. So with a guy going in the round 13, take the chance. It's not that big of a deal. Moving on to player number 7, though, this is going to be Evan Engram, New York Giants. He was a first-round pick in 2017. This is a huge year for him, as this is a contract year, as the team, the Giants, can decide to either exercise that option or he will be a free agent. Health is the biggest issue for Evan Engram this year. Engram had a great rookie season in 2017, finishing as the tight end 5. Unfortunately, in the past 2 seasons, he has left the fantasy and the team down, missing 5 games in 2018 and then 8 games last year. For the year, though, he had 44 catches for 467 yards and 3 touchdowns, so he was fantastic in those 8 games that he played. He just couldn't stay on that field. Similar to Gronk, unfortunately, Engram has all the talent in the world, but nothing has clicked for him so far health-wise. His ADP at 704 is too rich for my blood, but if he lasted into the late 8th round or into the 9th, the potential upside is then probably too much to not risk it. Moving on to player number 6, that is going to be Jared Cook, New Orleans Saints. He set a career high in touchdowns last season with 9. He will be 33 years old when the season begins, and he's a reliable target for Drew Brees. Jared Cook has usually been a pretty reliable tight end since entering the league as a 3rd rounder in 2009. Although the past 3 seasons, though, he has really turned it on, emerging as an underrated player in both facets of the game. Last year, he had 43 catches for 705 yards and 9 touchdowns, and he probably won't replicate the tight end touchdowns again, but he could get more receptions and yards this year. His ADP is 1004, and this is really the guy I've been targeting when it comes to tight ends. I do prefer safer tight ends, and as much as I would love to have Kittle or Kelce, it's tough spending such an early round pick for them, so Cook is definitely my guy. Looking at player number 5, that is going to be Darren Waller, Las Vegas Raiders. Waller exploded last year out of nowhere. He is under contract until the 2024 season, and Las Vegas did add 3 rookie wide receivers during this draft, unfortunately. Darren Waller entered the league as a 6th round pick in 2015 with the Ravens. His first 3 seasons in the league, he caught a total of 18 passes. You heard me right. His first 3 seasons, 18 passes. Then, his second year with the Raiders, everything clicked. He went on to catch 90 balls for 1,145 yards and 3 touchdowns. It helped tremendously that he was pretty much the second option and sometimes the first option in Oakland behind Tyrell Williams, but the Raiders did sign him to a 4-year extension in October. His ADP is 512 right now, and even though the Raiders did draft 3 rookie wide receivers, Carr will still target Waller plenty, and he might not ever get back to the 90 catches and 1,100 yards he did have, but 70 catches for 850 is definitely in play, and he should see a rise in his touchdowns as well. Moving on to player number 4, that is going to be Mark Andrews, Baltimore Ravens. Mark had a big breakout last year. He led the team with 98 targets, and he does have type 1 diabetes, but he does expect to play this year. Andrews was a 3rd round pick out of Oklahoma and did fine his rookie season, but he really stepped up last year and became Lamar's number 1 option in the passing game. Last year, he had 64 catches for 852 yards and 10 touchdowns, and although he might not lead the team in targets again, he should once again see close to 100 targets. The best thing going for him is that Lamar probably won't be able to replicate what he did last year on the ground, so that should force the Ravens to pass more. At least this is what you would hope if you did draft him for fantasy. His ADP of 409 is definitely a pretty penny, but if he does the exact same or even just a bit better, as I do predict, he should pay off, but he does have the most risk of any of these early tight end options. Moving on to tight end number 3, that is going to be Zach Ertz, Philadelphia Eagles. Zach will be a free agent for the 2022 season. He had 135 targets last year, and he does still have to compete with emerging tight end Dallas Goedert. Zach Ertz has been one of the best tight ends since coming out of Stanford in 2013. He has had over 800 receiving yards the past 5 seasons and should once again hit that milestone. He did regress just a tad from 2018, but still had, like I said, 135 targets, which was 2nd most among tight ends and would have been 10th most among wide receivers. For the year, he had 88 catches for 916 yards and 6 touchdowns, and luckily for him, the Eagles have had the worst wide receiver luck the past 2 seasons, and it looks as if that will continue this year as a new wideout Marquise Goodwin has opted out for the year, and Alshon Jeffrey is coming back from an injury-riddled season as well. Jalen Reagor is a rookie wide receiver, so I fully expect the Eagles to ride Ertz hard to begin the year once again. His ADP of 503, and this is really a solid place for him, as I think you should be able to get him even later in drafts, so he will return value no problem. Now, like I said, he will, of course, split time with Dallas Goedert, but Zach is the veteran on this team, and you can count on him once again this year. Moving on to player number 2, this is going to be George Kittle, San Francisco 49ers. He has had back-to-back seasons with 1,000 yards. The offense runs right through George Kittle, and he signed a huge 5-year, $75 million contract extension, which will last him through 2025. And he actually signed that Wednesday or Thursday. The news broke that he did sign this huge extension. So Kittle was a 5th-round pick out of Iowa in 2017, and he has made every team regret not taking him 4 rounds earlier, even including the San Francisco 49ers for not taking him in the 4th round or 3rd round. But he has easily been the 2nd best tight end in the league, as not only does he do an incredible job as a wide receiver, he is an excellent blocker as well, making him an every down player. He did have just a smidge of regression in the yards department, losing about 300 yards, but he was still a beast. Last year, he had 85 catches for 1,053 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he actually has never had a year with more than 5 touchdowns. If he was able to get double-digit touchdowns with the same receiving line, he would easily be one of the best fantasy assets in the game, and he is already close to that, so you could just imagine the potential. He's going to cost a late 2nd or early 3rd round selection if you do want him on your team, but there's no doubt that he will produce for you. But are you willing to pass on the star wide receiver or running back for that elite tight end advantage? I have never done this before in my long career of fantasy football, but he and the next guy we will talk about sure are making me think long and hard about changing that strategy. And of course, tight end number 1 for the upcoming 2020 fantasy football season, that is going to be Travis Kelce, Kansas City Chiefs tight end. He has had 4 consecutive seasons of 1,000 yards. He's had 4 consecutive seasons finishing as the number 1 tight end. And he signed a 4-year extension through the 2025 season, literally maybe just a couple hours or maybe a day after George Kittle. So both of these top 2 guys will be stuck with their team for at least another 4 or 5 years. So Kelce has been an absolute monster since 2014. He didn't play at all his rookie year, but since then he has been the best tight end without question. Now with Pat Mahomes locked up for 10 years, the 30-year-old Kelce should keep producing until he decides to hang up the cleats. Last year he had 97 catches for 1,229 yards and 5 touchdowns, and I do expect the touchdowns to bounce back to around 8 or more, as he has only scored double-digit touchdowns once, but I bet he will do it again this year for sure. He will cost you a 2nd-round pick, maybe a 3rd-round pick if you're lucky, but just like Kittle, he should easily replicate that value. And that will actually be it for today's episode, ladies and gentlemen. So like I said, make sure you come back Friday as we will have our first mock draft video, as the fantasy football season is just right around the corner as we are getting close to kickoff. So make sure you smash that thumbs up button, share this video, get it out there, get more people to watch this. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, as this has been Wade with Tungsten Gaming Sports. Don't forget to put God above all. I'll see you next time.